Hi, this is Mandy from Mandy's Geek Boutique. I lost the start of the recording. I'm not entirely sure what happened, but basically all I've done is I've prepped my cup by sanding it. I spray painted it white and then I spray painted it red. Also, what you missed out on seeing was me picking out some wrapping paper, and I just cut it to the height that I wanted to have it going up on the cup. And so now I'm just taking some Mod Podge and putting a really good coat of Mod Podge just up to where the height of the paper will be. I'm just using regular Christmas wrap. This was a total experiment. I had no idea whether this cup was going to work out. I had never put paper like this onto a cup before, and as you'll see, I had quite a few mistakes along the way. I've left them in so that you can see that sometimes just going with it, and even when everything feels like it's just not working, you can still get a beautiful result in the end. So, nice thick coat of Mod Podge with the paper going over it. It doesn't really matter too much if it's streaky. However, I wasn't sure. The paper's really thin, and I wasn't sure how it was going to react with the liquid glue. So I did try and get it as streak free as possible and as even as possible. Okay, so that's just a cup that's got some resin in the bottom of it, and I've just put a pool noodle in it, and it works really well as a holder for my cups when I'm it works a little bit better than the pool noodle I used in my last video on its own. So here I am trying to just adjust the paper around. This would have been a lot easier. You'll notice that I do actually have a lot of trouble with this, but I do get there eventually, and I learned a lot while doing it. The paper was really, really thin, but it was very easy to lift up again and move around and manipulate. Using the liquid glue gives you a lot of time to play and get it right. So just take your time and you will get there eventually. It's really just a matter of smoothing out that paper, lining it up, and making sure that you're happy with the result. On the bottom, I actually overlapped the bottom a little so that, and then at the end I just sort of pressed it underneath a little so that just to get that nice smooth edge on the bottom. So then I realized that it was probably going to be a lot easier if I took it off the pole I was using, and then the paper ripped in half. Now this actually worked out really, really well. If I was to do another cup like this, which I hopefully will, I would start with 2 pieces, because now it just goes on so easy, and I just lined it up, made sure that there was no jagged edges, and that yeah, it just went on really well after it ripped. So hindsight, put it on in 2 pieces if you're using a tapered cup. Okay, so I'm just folding back the edge there so that I can line it up. And then I'll take my X-Acto knife and just slice along the seam, like along there, just to make a nice little seam, making sure that it's straight on the cup, not on the paper. And then there will be a little bit of overlap because of the tapering, and I'm just okay, so now I'm just making sure that it's all glued down, and I put in a little bit of extra over the top of that seal so that it seals nicely. I'm about to make a mistake here. This is where I should have waited for the glue to dry before putting a coat of Mod Podge over the top. But because it wasn't dry, I ended up with some wrinkles. Just like a fabric cup, you need to seal the paper. Otherwise, the epoxy will leak into it and cause like that oil stain look. So next time I would leave it to dry and then put it on. So after this, I did 3 coats of Mod Podge and I sealed it with my Cabochons clear. Now I'm going to put on the glitter on the top half of my cup. I decided to do the tacket method with this, and again I lost a little bit of my footage. I have no idea what happened with this video. I wasn't 100% certain I was going to do it, so I might have just forgot to hit record. Okay, so I've already got the tacket made up, 50-50 water and tacket glue, and then I'm putting it on nice and smoothly, just like always with the tacket method. Nice even strokes, and I'm using a fine metallic glitter, which the tacket method isn't great for, because you do just end up with a nice flat surface, but I decided to do it just so that it was smooth and shiny, and it really did just lent itself to being beautiful for the bottom of the cup, for the top of the cup, sorry. Yeah. So just making sure that there's no streaks and that it's nice and smooth. And you'll notice that I actually go around the cup sometimes at the top, and that's just to make sure that I have got glue over that entire rim so that I don't end up with patches where there's no glitter at the top. You want to take your time with this part. You don't want to make any, you don't want to rush it. Make sure that you get all your streaks out. I'm using the Mod Podge brush. I find that it's wonderful for not having any streaks, but any nice synthetic bristle brush will usually work. Once you've got it all smoothed out and all the streaks and you're happy with it, that's when you want to leave it to dry for about 15 minutes so that with the tacket glue it stays sticky. So while it dries, it is still going to be sticky once it has finished drying. So I'm grabbing my glitter. This is Black Magic Glitters Ruby My Dear. It is one of my favorite red glitters in the world. Like I said before, it is an ultra fine metallic glitter, so it has sparkle without being overly blingy, and I think it's just a gorgeous Christmas red. And I did lose the footage of me rubbing it in, but I did notice that when I rubbed this one in, very little of it came off. Most of it went straight in, and it just, you'll see when I go to put on the epoxy just how smooth and beautiful the ultrafine metallics come up with the tacket method. So you can see here just how beautiful that has come up. I have sprayed sealed that with the Cabathanes Clear, and I'm about to put on some ribbon. You'll actually see me looking at a couple of different ribbons before deciding on the tartan ribbon. At this point, I still wasn't even sure what decal I was going to be putting on the top, but I knew that I wanted something very Christmassy and very maybe traditional, but not too traditional. So these are actually, this is a really cute ribbon. It's little elf legs and feet, but I didn't think that it fitted with the reindeer, so I chose the tartan, and I think that it turned out gorgeous. Okay, so at this point, I had never attached ribbon to a cup before, and I thought maybe the E6000 glue was going to be the best bet. So I just cleaned up the stray glitter from my craft mat and made sure that there wasn't any more on the cup. There was a little bit. And so then I got my E6000 glue in a second. Yep, there we go. And I thought maybe even if I just put it on the first little bit and attach it with that first, it might just hold a little bit. I considered hot glue, but it does tend to go a little bit lumpy under the ribbon, so I wanted something smoother. I wanted my ribbon to lay flat, or as flat as possible, on the cup. Now the E6000 didn't work quite as well as I thought it would, and I do switch to Mod Podge, which worked out really, really well in the end. Yep, so there I am getting my Mod Podge. And I just took my time, making sure I did use quite a lot of glue. You want your ribbon to be completely secure and completely dry before you seal it and before you put on your epoxy. Otherwise you'll end up with bubbles under your ribbon where it comes up and just looks really bad and ugly, and it does affect the integrity of your cup. So make sure that you do take your time with this step and make sure that you don't have any air bubbles underneath your ribbon, and that it is completely dry and then sealed really, really well before you epoxy. And again, of course, this step would be a lot easier on a straight cup like a skinny, but I like things to be difficult, and of course I'm using a tapered cup. So I was going to speed this part up, and then I thought that it's probably really important for you guys to see how important it is just to take your time and get it right. So now when I've finished, I just trim off the excess ribbon and make sure that it is lined up nicely, and then again I'm going to go around multiple times and just smooth it out, making sure that there are absolutely no air bubbles and that it's straight and smooth. As I said before, after it is completely dry, I will seal it a few times with the Cabothane clear. So this is just me putting on the epoxy, the first coat. I'm using the EX74 and just making sure that I get a good even coat all the way around the cup. And making sure that it's nice and even. I do like the fact that epoxy self-levels. You don't have to be overly careful with it. But you do want to make sure that you've got a good even coat. Otherwise, you end up with the problem that I have later on. So I was watching this spin and I thought, nope, I want more sparkles. So I grabbed a couple of my glitters. This one here is just a clear, it's actually the clear base that Sparkles by CarrBee Designs uses for her mixes. I somehow managed to get a bag of it in my order as a bonus bag, and it just adds, it takes up the colors behind it, and it just adds this extra little bit of sparkle, a little bit of extra dimension, and I just thought that it looks stunning, and I have used a lot of it since getting it. So here I am, I'm just adding it to the top part. The cup has been spinning for a little while now, so it has thickened up, and I don't have to worry about it traveling too much down into the rest. It'll pretty much now stay where I put it. So there we go, I'm adding those. And in a minute I will also grab, also from I am sorry about that. Also from Sparkles by CarrBee Designs, my 4-pointed stars. I can't remember what they're called, but I will have it linked in the description below. So I've popped some of those into a little, one of my little plastic shot glasses that I like to use to keep my little bits together. And then I will add a lot. To start off with, just a couple. And then I decide that Christmas is all about the sparkle. And I go nuts. I just add a ton of them. So after adding all that sparkle, I knew the perfect decal to go on. 'Tis the season to sparkle. Okay, again, in hindsight, I would have actually did an offset for this decal because it does get a little lost on my cup. But it's just for me, so I wasn't too worried. So I've cut this out of holographic glitter. I'm pretty holographic vinyl. I'm pretty sure that it is from the Sizer range, but I'm not 100% certain. But I did buy it from Craft Supplies, Vinyl Craft Supplies Australia. I really like their range, their prices, and their transparency. When they're having trouble with orders, they let you know. They are really great at communicating with you, and yeah, I've been using them for years now and highly recommend them. So yeah, holographic vinyl is a nightmare to work with. It doesn't like to come up, it doesn't like to go off, it is horrible to weed, but the results are stunning. It looks amazing on any project you use it on. So just deciding where I want to put it, and there we go. Right there. Like, as you can see already, that it is going to get lost. But I think it shows up just enough to be practical still. So yep, just very carefully getting it on, making sure that there's no air bubbles under the letters. It's very fine letters. I got the decal, the SVG file from Etsy. I just put in "'Tis the season to sparkle," found one I liked, and downloaded it. When I can't be bothered going in and designing my own decals, I love Etsy, and I like the fact that I get to support other crafters when I buy from them. Okay, so I just rearranged some of the stars, making sure that they looked okay, that they weren't on any of the stars that were already on the cup. So this is where I make the biggest mistake. I thought there was already so much on this cup that I would only do a thin layer of epoxy, and I actually didn't end up putting enough on. So I end up with a very horrible coat as a result. You will see in the next step. Always make sure that you put on enough epoxy. I think I mixed up about 20 mils, and I think I only used about 15, and it was not enough for this cup. So just adding some heat to pop any air bubbles that have come up, and making sure that I've got it all over the cup, which, like I said, wasn't quite working. I'm adding some Pearl-Ex powder to the leftover epoxy, and I just mix that up. I think I added just the regular macro pearl and some interference violet to this one. I stirred that in nicely. I added a little bit of heat so that it would run again, because at this point the epoxy was getting a little bit thicker and a little bit harder to use. And so then I just grabbed my little unicorn horn mold and I filled that up. I am hoping to show you guys how I use my little unicorn horns in a future video if I get time. So sorry about the yelling in the background there. I've got my kids home today and they are being a little bit rambunctious. So I mentioned that I had some issues with this coat of epoxy. You're about to see what that was. I ended up with a big air bubble right in the middle of one of my little reindeer's heads. I made a horrible joke about Bambi's mum and thought, yep, I can fix this. So what I did was I sanded the whole cup over and found that there was a whole lot more issues. You don't need to see me sanding. It took me forever to sand this cup back until I was happy that I was going to be able to fill in those bubbles and salvage this cup. Okay, so after I've sanded it, I clean it with my alcohol just to make sure that I get all of that sanding epoxy dust off it and that there's no fingerprints, no oils, nothing on there that's going to affect my next coat of epoxy. So I just wipe it with my microfiber cloth, cleaning it really, really well. Okay, so once again I've made up my epoxy, the EX74, and this time when I apply it, because I've got that hole and those bubbles, I am going to use a paddle pop stick to start with. And I'm just going to start off with, I'm going to wait for that little hole to come back around, and I'm going to drip epoxy straight into that hole just to make sure that I have absolutely 100% got epoxy in there and that I know that it's going to be filled. In the end, I actually did another coat of epoxy over this cup, but I don't show that. I was a bit worried about the video getting a bit too long, so I took some photos of the finished product and they will be at the end. And this is me just making sure wherever there are any of those bubbles or dimples in my epoxy, I have made sure that to go over them with a little bit of epoxy before I do my regular application. After I had done this coat, it was nice and smooth, but I did another coat just to be sure, and it just hid the imperfections just that little bit more. Quite often, epoxy will actually highlight imperfections instead of hiding them. So you need to be really careful. So after I did this coat, I did sand it back again just to make sure everything was smooth and perfect, and then I added another coat of epoxy. So overall, I learnt a lot while making this cup, and I think that my experiment was a success. So here you can see how that little unicorn horn turned out. Very cute. And I had quite a bit of epoxy left over on this coat because I had put in 30. I made up a full 30 mils. And again, I didn't use it all. But this time I did use enough. So once again, I added some Pearl-Ex to it and I put it into some unicorn horn molds, and into my my little unicorn ice mold as well, which I will tell you right now, I have never used for ice. It has only ever been used for epoxy. So after I had put all my leftover epoxy into molds so that nothing had gone to waste, I then hit my cup with some heat just to make sure that any air bubbles were going to come out. I did not want to repeat of what had happened in the last coat. So there we have it. In a second you'll see the finished result. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you like and subscribe and share if you like it. Thank you very much.